Silent Hill F. This would be a spoiler review. I have a review of it on my blog, soundaboutInMyHead.com. There's probably a handful of spoilers in there. It's kind of hard to get too in depth about a game without some spoilers, but I think I've stayed pretty clean. I ended up giving this game a 2.5 out of 5. There was stuff I liked about it, but just overall, I think it was wasn't what I was looking for. The Silent Hill series has been inconsistent. I think the first 3 games were classics. After that, they never really hit the highs that they did from those first 3 games. I think this game takes an interesting twist on the franchise. You have 1960s Japan as opposed to most of the games taking place in the United States in the mostly present day. I didn't mind the change in scenery. I think it was nice. It was nice to be somewhere different. They introduced their own lore to the franchise. They had this fox cult that was like worshiping this town, and I thought that was interesting. But it was disappointing that nothing blatantly tied back to any of the classic Silent Hill games. Like, is there any connection between this fox cult and the cult in the town of Silent Hill, the Order? Is there any crossover between their gods or their deities? Like, is there any connection, or is it just another freaky town? Like, I wish there would have been a little bit clearer connection between the two. The gameplay is about what you would expect from a Silent Hill. I mean, there's moments where you have to run, which are always annoying, where you don't outrun this thing and you automatically die. I mean, you want to explore this town and see all the crazy, weird stuff that they put in this town. But at least a lot of those places where you have to run, you could always backtrack and check them out. But the combat, it seems like every game now is really into counters, where like you fight the bad guys, and there's always a point where there's a move that you can counter, and if you counter just right, you could do some significant damage to them, and that's what Silent Hill does. Again, it's a pretty modern touch. It's fine. I kind of hate that you have to master the skill. You can't just kind of duke it out if you want to, especially because this character's just a schoolgirl essentially, so she's weird. Like, she shouldn't be specializing in combat. It's a kind of weird thing to pick up. Like, oh, if I dodge perfectly, I could do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, you're a schoolgirl. Like, where are you getting? They're all supposed to be average Joes. I mean, it's a nitpick, but I just thought it felt a little weird, a little wonky getting used to, especially in the beginning, especially when you're trying to learn when to counter. I'm not a fan of the breakable weapons system, which this game has, especially some of the weapons they present. Like the steel pipe here, looks like, I can't imagine this thing is that fragile that it would break just whacking a couple monsters upside the head. It just seems a little unrealistic. I can see the sledgehammer, it's got a wooden handle, that breaks eventually, or I can see the axe has a wooden handle. I can see these type of weapons breaking. But it's cool if you have at least one weapon that maybe it wasn't the most powerful, but at least it was sturdy and you kind of kept you going. So it kind of sucks when you're trying to explore, you're trying to do something, and your weapon's about to break and you can't do anything, and you're kind of forced to abandon what exploring the town, trying to find these cool notes and little tidbits that make it interesting. And then the flip side is, do you have a section of the game where you have unbreakable weapons, and they're not the greatest, and you don't got much of a selection, but the enemies there respawn, and they give you a decent amount of time before they get back up. But if you're really lost and trying to find where you're supposed to go next, these enemies pop back up, and they could be pretty tough in the beginning. That leads me into another aspect of the game, which would be the puzzles. I think some of the early Silent Hills had some really clever puzzles, and it just kind of felt like you find whiteout is covering like the combination of something. You got to find like paint thinner, and you got to get it off there so you see the combination to open this briefcase. Like, just kind of felt like sort of real world kind of solutions to certain problems. I mean, granted, it's presented pretty blatantly. Like, you got to know what you got to do pretty clearly. It's not like you're just guessing. Like, oh, I wonder if I had some paint thinner. Like, you find the paint thinner, and it's what you need to complete the quest or whatever, the puzzle. The puzzles here, for the most part, are just kind of like trying to read the clue and figure out what goes here. It's just a matter of, okay, does this circle go here or does it go here? And it's just kind of a lot of that. There's a sequence where you got to use these levers to open certain doors, and then you got to go through a couple times because now you can get the doors you couldn't get to before, and it feels a little Zelda-like, but very light. You know, it seemed like something you see in like a Zelda dungeon, and it didn't take away from the game. It's just kind of like, all right, it's not that crazy of a puzzle. I think the best use of puzzles and the most Silent Hill inspired use of the puzzles is later in the game when you have to return home. And like not only you got like 3 levels of the house where like as you go through the doors it changes to a different version of the house and a slightly different layout, but you got the multiple puzzles. Like one's pretty straightforward, like the scale, but I thought that the portraits thing was, you know, decent. I thought that the wax and the key and all that stuff was pretty cool. I thought that was like pretty classic Silent Hill. That was my favorite section puzzle wise. The rest was just like, okay, you fought some enemies, you got this little circle, now you just got to figure out where it goes. And I thought that was a little too and some of them are a little too open in interpretation, like the Scarecrow puzzle. Like the clues are so vague. Like one says like, oh, like the guy's not looking at me, and there's like one Scarecrow that's not looking at anybody. So I'm thinking, okay, he's the one not looking at anybody, so that's the proper Scarecrow. No, it was the person that he wasn't looking at that was standing behind him, and it was just kind of easy to screw up. Now you screwed up the puzzle, and you're trying to get an achievement out of it. Now you can't get it unless you start over. And again, it's nitpicking. Maybe I'm not smart enough to figure out their logic, but that's, you know, that's how I felt. As far as the game itself, the plot's a little weak. You know, there's some classic Silent Hill plots, like the first game, your daughter's missing, you got to find her. The second game, you get a mysterious note from your dead wife, and you got to investigate what's going on with this. And they're interesting. There's an intriguing mystery. Here, it's just kind of like, all right, just wander through town, and then until something happens, basically, and like, okay, find your friends. All right, now let's try to escape town. It's not a super pressing narrative. It's just kind of like, all right, we're just doing whatever. And on top of that, then you switch over to the Dark Shrine sections, and initially that feels like, okay, it's part of what we're supposed to be doing, but then more and more it feels like it's its own thing. It's like she starts getting more and more like zoned out as she's doing it. It just feels like it's telling a completely different story, unrelated to, like, you know, your escape from the town with your friends thing. And eventually they just kind of ditch the whole get out of town with your friends thing, and it just all focuses on this Dark Shrine thing. And it gives you so many questions, like, okay, what is going on? It's interesting. You're trying to figure out what's happening. You're trying to pick up the clues and like what's going on. And then you get to the end, it's like, wait, what the fuck just happened? And again, spoilers, is like, it seems obvious like somehow you've transformed into the fog monster that you've been dealing with most of the game, and then you have to fight it at the end, and then there's this weird segment where you're just running through different parts of the game trying to get away, and they're throwing dialogue at you, which seems like it might be telling you something important about what's going on, but you're so fixated on trying not to get killed by, you know, all the monsters that are everywhere, you kind of miss it. And then it's like you come out to some flashing lights, and then you're back at the fog monster again, and it ends. And then obviously the only ending available in the first playthrough heavily hints that turns out this whole thing was in your mind. You were at your wedding, and you get high as hell on these red pills that you've had during the game, and then you went on to some kind of massacre. And it's like, what? I just feel like you got none of your question answered. And I see that the game does have multiple playthroughs, and the second playthrough is supposed to have supposedly more clues of what really happened, and it unlocks a couple different endings. And maybe going down this road and seeing these second playthroughs and what I learned, it might make the story more interesting. But it's like, I feel like you shouldn't have to go through multiple endings to get the real story. Like this is not everybody has time to play a game like 5 different times. Like, you know, you want the answers now. So I think that was really disappointing. And as far as the second, here's another thing. This is actually one of the earliest I've gotten a game review of. I don't typically buy a game when it comes out. I usually wait to hear some reviews. I'm a fan enough of the Silent Hill franchise. I decided to get it early, and I had nothing else going on right now. And I usually play a game to completion before I get in there and talk about it. It's a little different with Silent Hill because the stuff, if you miss it, you can't go back and get it unless you start another game. So at least the first playthrough, I've done everything that I could. Maybe down the road I might put some other video or maybe some addition to like a review if I think there's enough interesting stuff in the second playthrough, because like I said, there is supposedly some new stuff and some new puzzles. So if I think that's adds any real major value to the game, I may tweak this review or add another review or do something later on, just in case people are curious. But adds any value to the game. And as far as Silent Hills go, I don't know. Like I said, I still think the first three are by far the best. My least favorite, and I don't got super strong memories of some of the later ones because I think I played them once through and that was enough for me. Never really a big fan of The Room, but I thought it had some interesting ideas. I thought Downpour was just forgettable. Homecoming had some interesting stuff going on. I thought Origins was nothing special, but for a portable game, I thought it really captured like a classic Silent Hill game. So where would I rank this one? The Silent Hill franchise? Better than Downpour, better than The Room. Maybe somewhere between Origins and Homecoming, where Homecoming tried to do something different, add some new lore. Just the game itself wasn't anything special, and I thought Origins kind of stuck to like the classics. I think this is somewhere in the middle. It tries to do something new, but I don't think it works all that well. I think if there's anything else about this game that's worth mentioning. Oh, actually, yeah. I think besides the breakable weapons and some other stuff, I think the most frustrating part about the game, and the reason I also knocked it down besides some of the plot related stuff, just the gauntlets at the end. Like, you get to this point in the game and it's like, there's points in the game you can run and sometimes you have to fight, and depending on what your health and your weapons look like, that colors your decision. But those points later in the game where it's like, no, you have to fight this tough monster and there's a bunch of other monsters around, and when you're done with that, then you can move forward. Oh yeah, here's another one, and when you're done with that, here's another one, and it's even harder, and then you're finally through that kind of little gauntlet, and it's like, nope, here's another little gauntlet, and another little gauntlet, and then a big gauntlet that's like non-stop fighting and fighting and fighting, and it's like, just it was getting worn out, and the fights can get pretty tough, and like you got enemies coming at you at all sides, and you dodge the one and the other one gets you, and some of them are so fast you really can't even outrun them. And, next thing you know, you get slashed in the back 3 times before you could take 2 steps, just trying to get some distance. And it's like, and I'm playing on, and the difficulty setting's weird. The way most games have are easy, medium, and hard, or easy, normal, hard. They call story mode their easiest mode. Hard is like the middle ground, and then you don't even unlock the hardest setting for combat until you beat the game once, and they call that like Into the Fog or something. So I played on what the game calls hard. I still think it's the normal setting. I think story's kind of like too weak. So I thought the combat was a little tricky and hard. I don't know if you play on the easier setting, how bad it is. I also had the puzzles set to the medium setting. I thought they were not too challenging. Like I said, sometimes you gotta do a little thinking and move some stuff around. But again, mostly it's just like, where does this go and where does that go? And I think that's it. I think the boss fights, there's really only a few true boss fights. I think it's like 4 of them. They could be pretty tough. I think the first one's just grueling. There's not a lot of openings, and your weapon you get at the time kind of sucks, and the boss seems to have like a lot of HP, and it's like a 20-minute, half-hour fight, unless you really get in there and try to counter everything. But it's a long fight, and then you get frustrated, you make a mistake, and it's over. And again, that's maybe just my skill set. I'm sure I've seen other people claim they knocked it out in like 10 minutes, but that fight's frustrating. Luckily, the rest aren't so bad. I mean, again, it's just a matter of picking and choosing how much you want to attack and how you are dodging and whatever. But I think that's it. Like I said, I don't think it was a bad Silent Hill game. I thought they could introduce some new lore that was interesting. The Japanese setting potentially could add a lot to the franchise, but the fact that it was so disconnected from the franchise, it just felt like it wasn't potentially really adding anything. It's like, oh, that's Japan stuff. That doesn't have any effect on anything going forward. Maybe we'll reference it in some other game, but going forward, this is just some side stuff. Like the stuff that happened in Silent Hill Room, like the little 21 Sacraments, all that stuff. It's never come into play, as far as I know, like any other game. And I said, combat's okay. The breakable weapons makes it a little rough. The gauntlet of enemies at the end makes it lose all its fun. The puzzles are mediocre. Like, there's nothing. Only a few of them are really like, wow, this is pretty cool. The rest are just like, okay. And again, yeah, that's about it. So if you want to read the mostly spoiler-free version of this review, I got that up. But I mostly have. Well, that's how it's thunderbittermyhead.com. But I mostly have movie reviews. I got TV show reviews. I also got a comic strip that I do, so if you want to check any of the other stuff out, that's awesome. And thanks for watching.